With house music having a huge comeback in the 2010s going into the 2020s, right now let's look at 10 of the most popular modern house music subgenres to get you even more familiarized with the differences in each category. Let's go. To start off, let's talk about the classic house music sound. This is describing an early house music style that is still very reminiscent of the disco days, with strong piano chords, funky bass lines, and that chugging guitar sound. Some of the early classic house music producers being Armin van Helden, David Morales, and Roger Sanchez, with modern examples of the classic house music sound being Silk City, MK, and Duke Dumont, among many more producers going back to that classic house music sound. The original underground sound of house music, acid house, started in the 80s influenced by one machine, the Behringer TD3 being an early bass synthesizer. Many pioneers of house music using this machine in their own tracks, with the song Acid Trax being one of the first to release with this psychedelic sound. A modern track being Palm Beach Banga by Fisher and No Drama by Walker and Royce. This acid sound being adopted primarily by techno producers, being a staple in modern techno. Tech house has now become one of the leading sounds in dance music, originating from a fusion of Detroit techno and that classic house music sound. But when it started, it reminisced more of a minimal style than what we know as tech house today, with artists such as Carl Cox and Grey Velvet in the early days. With producers such as Fisher and John Summit being some of the most popular DJs in the current dance music culture, tech house is still #1 in the dance music charts. Bass house, as the name entails, is a bass-focused house music. Bass house is also referred as grime house or bassline, unlike tech house where the bass lines lead into the more funky side, featuring heavy distorted bass sounds coming from artists like AC Slater, Abstract, or Mala. Also newer artists like Own Boss finding success with the bass music style. Tribal house being one of the first subgenres of house music coming from Latin and Black communities from New York, incorporating an emphasis on African percussion. This genre could be identified with a focus on the percussive elements, specifically some bongos. As it was one of the first subgenres of house music, it could vary in a wide variety of styles, from the traditional modern sound of Crusty to the big room sound of the duo Sunnery James and Ryan Marciano. Now tribal house has split into the two directions of its origin, the softer Afro House and the more tech house influenced Latin house. Afro House differentiates itself by being more influenced by deep house while still keeping the percussive elements of its predecessor. Influenced by the music of South Africa, where producers like Black Coffee have been internationally recognized for the genre. Also with many R&B artists such as Beyonce and Georgia Smith incorporating the style into their own music. As for Latin house, it split off into incorporating more Latin instruments such as trumpets, Latin guitars, flutes, and congas. With this style leaning more into the tech house sound, artists such as Hugle being one of the leading producers in this genre. Now, one of the most popular and relatively new genres of dance music that took over the radio is known as slap house, originally known as Brazilian bass. Originating from producer Alok from Brazil, the name slap house comes from the big emphasis on the heavy bass sound similar to a bass guitar slapping technique, but very few recognize the real origins of this genre, inspired by deep house and a fusion of psytrance. Producer Alok comes from the family that hosts one of the biggest psytrance festivals in Brazil, taking the heavy bass sound of psytrance and creating his own deep house style similar to the popular songs from the mid-2010s. Later on, this style was imitated by countless other producers, only expanding the popularity of this genre. This leading into one of the most popular electronic songs of the 2010s, the Roses remix by Imanbek. Even though Electro House has declined in popularity over the years, this genre was the main sound of electronic music from the mid-2000s into the early 2010s, with Benny Benassi's Satisfaction and other songs by David Guetta. This style will later morph into what we know as today as Big Room and the Melbourne Bounce, with this genre featuring heavy synth leads pioneered by Afrojack, Tiesto, and still David Guetta, evolving the genre into what we know it today. Originating from the UK, progressive house was a change in direction from the hard rave sound of the 90s. While trance music was increasing in popularity throughout Europe, progressive house fused the trance and house music genre into creating a more euphoric sound, with artists like Deadmau5 and Cascade popularizing the genre in the mid-2000s. Now in the 2020s, we're seeing a huge increase in this style with artists like Cristoph, camel fat, and tin liquor leading the way. Well, now these 10 genres have taken over the dance music world in the past couple years. But let me know what you think of these subgenres, and let's discuss in the comments other music styles that you would want me to talk about. My name is Hiram with Ultra Frequencies. We'll catch you on the next one. Peace out.